Welcome to the virtual college fair for all Alaska students. Thank you for joining us today. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening today, so be sure to check out the full schedule at strivescan.com/Alaska. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website that you registered. I'd now like to turn it over to our presenters.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a couple of minutes. I want to leave time for others to filter in, and we'll get our screen share up and running. But essentially, we plan on sharing a bit with you about why the lower or Southern Pacific Northwest TU is the perfect place to study the liberal arts. First, we'll walk through some of our themes and values that we all have in common and share a little bit of insight on what makes each of our campuses unique. And then to finish off, we're going to share a bit more about the application process and open things up to a Q&A. I'm going to introduce myself and give my colleagues a chance to do so, and then we'll commence with a few housekeeping items and get started. So my name is Louise Carneas. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an assistant director of admission at Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, the town so nice they named it twice.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elena Becker. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior admission counselor at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington. Puget Sound has about 2,400 undergraduate students, so kind of on the big end of small.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nell Scherfling. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm an admission fellow at Reed College. Reed is located in Portland, Oregon, right in the city, with a student body of about 1,400 students. So we like to say the smaller side of small.
Hi, my name is Leah Boynton. I'm an assistant director of admission at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon, the state capital. Our institution has about 1,800 undergraduate students and about 600 graduate students as well.
Hi there, I'm Jeremy Jackson. I use he, him pronouns. I am with Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, and we have an undergraduate enrollment of about 1,900.
Excellent, thank you. So if you are just arriving, you'll hear from all of us again about ourselves and our individual schools in just a bit. We'll be going through some of our unique programs, pretty rapid fire, so don't be overwhelmed, and just make note of the college you're interested in. If you hear about some program that you're excited to hear more about, we would all love to connect with you further. And we have tons of virtual visit options where you can hear more about us individually. So today we'll keep that portion of the presentation brief where we talk about ourselves and instead focus on like opportunities and factors that we all have in common. Housekeeping items, please do type your questions into the question and answer as they occur, and we'll do our best to answer them in the order that they were received after the presentation concludes. If you see that we have dismissed your question, don't fret. That just means that there was a duplicate question or that your question was school specific enough that we'll answer it afterwards via email. With that, I will pass things on to my colleague, Leah.
So as you see here, we have this nice map that shows you where each of our institutions are located between Washington and Oregon. As you can see, they're not too far apart, but we have a lot of different distinctions that we'll go through in a little bit. To start, though, we wanted to talk about interdisciplinary learning, which is what all five of our institutions focus on in terms of your education and curricular approach at our institutions. A lot of people ask, what does interdisciplinary learning really mean? And for us, it means that students are asked to make connections across disciplines, study in a wide variety of different subjects so that they have a large breadth of education while also having a specific major in which they focus. This allows students to be well-rounded in terms of their academic experience. And so they head into their first career often having multiple different perspectives and the ability to see things from other perspectives as well. In this approach, students will often take about 1/3 of their time in general education requirements, 1/3 of their time on electives, and 1/3 of their time on their major, which gives students both the ability to explore different types of classes, potentially add a double major or a minor if they wanted to pursue something they didn't anticipate they'd love. And this also gives students to have that opportunity to have a depth of learning in a specific major as well. Our class sizes are all very small and they're often discussion based, and so you have the ability to bring up new ideas, ask concrete questions, and really personalize your education to create an experience that makes the most sense for your learning style as well. All of our classes at all 5 of our institutions are taught by outstanding faculty who are very distinguished in their particular fields, but also have a passion for teaching and have this ability to create an experience for students that they can take on into what they'd like to do after they graduate. This leads us into our next topic, which is about mentorship and research, which I'll pass on to Nell.
I'm muted again. Mentorship and research is a common value held by all of the schools in the Northwest 5. And this is something that comes as a direct result of these small class sizes that Leah was just describing. And being in this class environment where you're talking to your peers, it lets you develop a sense of community to know the folks around you, but you also get to know your professors really well. And that's another value. Your professor isn't just this, face at the front of a lecture hall. There's someone who gets to know your direct interests, how you're acclimating to school. Frequently, the relationships that you develop with professors will sustain you through your entire time of undergraduate. And so that provides you with quite a few opportunities for mentorship. A common story you'll hear at any of our campuses is students' opportunities to go to a professor's home for dinner, or to have coffee and snacks and chat about what they're researching in the classroom, but also about their own interests. And so that's just a really nice individualized aspect of these small class sizes. And from that close relationship with professors, students also are offered many different research opportunities. So these are opportunities to kind of go beyond what is already known, but to ask big questions and to find out new things along the way. And I would like to pause for a moment to just describe the different types of research that students can do, because I think often the phrase research brings up ideas of a microscope and a lab bench. And while certainly that is true in many of the sciences, you will be putting on a lab coat, working at a microscope, pipetting, as this image shows. But that's not the only thing that research looks like. It's also present in the social sciences and the humanities. It might mean going through library archives, finding old newspaper articles, or even interviewing local members of the community and putting together that narrative data. And so these research opportunities are just one way that students can explore a variety of different skill sets and develop new skills, all through that kind of guiding lens of having a professor right by your side who's at the forefront of their education, is going to help you along the way.
All right, I just want to talk to you all a little bit about campus and community life and what that kind of looks like at a liberal arts institution. We go to college for lots of reasons. We go to college to learn and to explore academics, but we also go to college to explore ourselves outside of academics. And that's a big part of campus and community life. One of the questions that we often get as smaller liberal arts institutions is, because you all are small schools, what is there for students to do? And I think that's a really valid question. However, most students and families are really surprised to learn that even though we are small schools and small campuses, there's just as much to do, to be a part of, and be involved in here as any other larger institution. So whether it's athletics, or intramural club sports, maybe you want to be a part of some type of religious or spiritual life, maybe a student government association, or something like the gardening club. While I don't know if all of the institutions here offer all of those things, we all offer a wide array, a plethora of different clubs and organizations for students to be a part of. And within the liberal arts, I think there's a couple of things I'd like to point out, I think, that are specific to kind of campus and community life within the liberal arts scope. I think sense of belonging is a big one. Because we are such small, close-knit communities, that sense of belonging is already there. It's there in your classes, and it's there in the clubs and organizations that you're going to be a part of. Another thing I want to mention in line with kind of our liberal arts values and roots is individuality. I think campus and community life at a liberal arts college is a place where we all really encourage students to explore who they are, take the time to explore who you are and express who you are, and grow as an individual, as I said, both academically and personally. The last thing I'll mention is just the ways in which we connect and collaborate within our communities. I think I can speak for my colleagues and say that all of the cities and locations that we're in are all extensions of our campus. We've all been in our cities and our locations for a long time. We're very established. And with that comes access to service and volunteer-oriented opportunities related to what you're studying or otherwise. There's access to internships and jobs and other opportunities as well. The last thing I will mention is no matter what institution you may be looking at, if you're unsure of a particular club or organization that they may offer, you're curious about what's it like to get involved in athletics or XYZ part of campus life, reach out to an admissions representative like myself or any of us here, and we would be happy to connect you with advisors or current students that are a part of all of those clubs and organizations, so you as an individual can get a more solid understanding of whether or not what we offer here on our campuses is what you really want as part of your college experience.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. We're going to pivot for now and share a bit more about programs on our individual campuses. So once again, I'm Louise Carneas and I'm with Whitman. Many of Whitman's most notable programs stem from our core value of environmental sustainability, which is not unique to our campus. Environmental sustainability is a shared value across, I would say, all of our schools and is really integral to the culture of the Pacific Northwest. You've probably grown used to this in Alaska. Your natural surroundings really influence your lived experience and the way you move around the state, the way that the seasons are changing. So the environmental studies program at Whitman was the first of its kind and is focused on environmental studies as an overarching teaching philosophy rather than a single academic department or major. So at Whitman, students in the environmental studies program are required to combine environmental studies with another area. For example, environmental studies biology, or perhaps environmental studies geology within the sciences, or with economics, politics, psychology, or sociology in the social sciences. There are going to be 10 of those areas total, and it's very easy to create your own. Classes across all the environmental studies fields will have titles like Whitman and the Global Food System, Indigenous Literature of the Pacific Northwest, drawing directly from our local community, our local ecosystem. The Walla Walla Valley is your classroom for all students, but perhaps most distinctively for environmental studies students. You can travel 10 minutes from campus and survey soil drainage or river pollution. And also students in environmental studies will focus on public health and access to healthcare, advocacy for migrant workers, which is so intertwined with the agricultural industry that we're kind of constantly surrounded by out in Eastern Washington. The next program I want to highlight at Whitman is kind of an extension of this. It's born out of our approach to environmental studies. This is actually a unique off-campus studies program called Semester in the West. It's open to all students regardless of what they're studying, and it's a semester-long road trip throughout the American West. You will visit the Navajo Nation, the border with Mexico, multiple state and national parks, tiny ranches, mega farms. You'll speak with conservationists, you'll speak with national park rangers. Students will conduct basically a series of interviews, workshops, and research to answer questions of equity and sustainability in the American West on this really immersive kind of off-campus experience. So finally, I want to bring things back to campus and talk about Whitman's Power and Privilege Symposium. Though it's not specifically related to environmental justice, it very much demonstrates, I would say, our students' passion for tackling complex issues in that same sense. The Power and Privilege Symposium happens each year as a day where students can discuss issues of equity and social justice as they appear, in the world around us, in our community, and of course on Whitman's campus, really kind of interrogating our structure as an institution. Those staff members and faculty members will be present and participate in discussions and panels. It is facilitated entirely by students. I haven't talked too much about the classroom thus far in this whole spiel in any traditional sense. Students at Whitman do go to class, right? They go to seminars, lectures, etc. But there are some lessons that we feel are better taught outside a traditional classroom environment. Having authentic conversations and workshops about identity politics is really important to our students. With that, I want to pass things on to Elena at Puget Sound.
Thanks, Louise. Well, as Louise says, my name is Elena and I work at the University of Puget Sound. And as I mentioned in my introduction, Puget Sound is really on the big end of small. So we have about 2,400 undergraduate students, about 200 graduate students, so primarily undergraduate focused, but there are a few hundred folks on our campus getting master's or doctorate degrees in education or counseling or physical therapy. We still have an average class size of 17. We still have a student to faculty ratio of 11:1. So you're not losing any of the intimacy that you get when you think small college. But one of the things that being a little bit bigger has allowed Puget Sound to do is to really experiment with maybe some extra programs. So in addition to the things that you maybe had an opportunity to take classes in high school, so your English and your biology and your psychology and your political science, we also are able to offer programs in neuroscience. We have a global development program. We have a special program called International Political Economy that our professors have literally written the book on. Their textbook is used at more than 200 other colleges and universities. We offer a special program called the Pacific Rim Program, which is a year of travel around Asia for academic credit. So there is really enormous breadth reflected in our curriculum. That same breadth and diversity really lives in our student body. We're very proud of the fact that Puget Sound is what we sometimes joke and call an and school. So if you ask a Puget Sound student what she's involved in, you're likely to hear an answer that leans heavily on the word and. Well, I'm a sociology major and a French minor and an environmental policy minor, and I play the trumpet, and I'm on the club soccer team, and I studied abroad in India, and those lists go on and on. In the same way that you now in high school are probably not defined by just one thing or one interest or one feature, students in college aren't either. You've heard my colleagues allude to this when they've talked about experiential learning or about community life or about research. Those are all things that should be able to fit together, and that's a really core part of our values at Puget Sound. Another way that we really embody that is by believing that every student, by the time he or she or they graduate, should really have an opportunity to put their learning to work outside of the classroom. More than 90% of our students by graduation will have done an internship, a research project, an extended community service project, or will have studied abroad. And we're really helped in this effort by our location. In Tacoma, we of course have all the resources of the city of Tacoma if a student wants to intern with Citizens for a Healthy Bay, or with the Tacoma Art Museum, or with the Tacoma Ballet. One of our business students just did a marketing campaign for them. But of course, we also have all the resources of Seattle, and we can also get out to the Olympic Peninsula easily. We have a lot of students who research in the Olympic National Forest who are interested in the social sciences. That's another part that is really key to our institutional personality. It's not just encouraging our students to be involved in a lot of things that they're passionate about, but giving them and really giving you the tools to see how those passions fit into a life and fit into the world, both while you're on campus and once you leave campus. As with everybody else this evening, we know that this is brief. So of course, if you want to chat a little bit more about what your interests are and where they maybe fit in that breadth of options or what Puget Sound might look like for you, I am always very happy to do that. But I now have the pleasure of turning you over to Nell so they can tell you a little bit about life at Reed College.
Thanks, Elena. My name is Nell Scherfling, and I'm an admission fellow here at Reed College. I graduated just this last spring with my degree in psychology. And one of my favorite values of Reed, and one thing that holds true for us, is that this is a school that is built around its students. One of our core values is having a strong sense of community with each other. With only 1,400 students, you really get to know your peers. And Reed is made up of many passionate and curious learners, thoughtful community members who all share this love for learning. This sense of community and trust in each other all boils down to what we like to call the honor principle. And that is a guiding philosophy that students at Reed use when they're in classrooms, when they're discussing with each other, when they're going about their extracurriculars or going out into the city of Portland. Students come back to this idea of how can they behave honorably. And like with most questions that we like to ask at Reed, there isn't any one singular answer. It's not something that you'll find written down in a textbook or guidelines that you can just follow and memorize. That's something that you have to think about that students have to think about for themselves is, what does it mean to live honorably? What does it mean to treat each other with honor? And having that kind of rooted foundation of the ways that we treat each other allows us to have some incredible resources on campus, whether that's our backpack co-op, where you can check out backpacks, hiking boots, sleeping bags, anything you need to get out and about in the Pacific Northwest and, go on a camping trip. All of those at no charge to yourself. Bring them back when you're ready. Another one of our resources is our bike co-op or bike collective, where students are learning bike mechanic skills and sharing that with each other. They have fixed my leaky tires more than once. And even those names itself, like co-op and collective, really speak to our values of community and sharing with each other. One other way that this manifests within our classrooms is through Reed's approach to grades. Around this common value of learning for learning's sake, we recognize that looking at a B+ or an A-, like having those thoughts about how do I make sure I get a 4.0, kind of detract from really enjoying learning and enjoying that process. So when students do receive back a test or an essay, instead they're getting 2 to 3 thoughtful paragraphs of feedback from their professor themselves. And I find that just allows folks to, again, focus on what they enjoy in the classroom. It creates a communal setting where you're asking these difficult questions, engaging rigorous topics, but doing so through this lens of collaboration rather than competition. And another value that we share at Reed is the opportunity, again, to ask those big questions and to really pursue them with a lot of resources under your belt. At Reed, every single senior in their senior year will complete a thesis, a year-long independent research project. That's really where you get to be in the driver's seat of your education, come up with a question, how you're going to pursue it, and you have a whole year to work individually with a professor, really come to some kind of answer. I appreciate that that's something that every single senior at Reed completes, because again, you're doing it with all the support of your peers to lift you up with your accomplishments and to lean on each other when you're going through the weeds of it. That allows our students to travel the world while pursuing their questions. We offer funded research opportunities for both the summer and the winter, along with 50 different study abroad programs in 30 different countries. And through these self-identified research projects, students can propose an idea they want to explore, an area of the country that they want to do so. One of our students this last year went to Sicily, Italy to study the role of puppet making in local theater. So just, one question that stems from an interest, hopefully giving you the tools to really pursue it and grow that idea. That's one of our values at Reed. Certainly there's so much more that I could talk about in ways that our folks engage in the community, support each other, all the different amazing research projects that students have accomplished over the last couple of years. And if you would like to hear about that, absolutely, please reach out to me. But I just want to end by again reiterating that Reed is a community that gives students the tools and the opportunity to grow into this passionate, thoughtful, caring individual, as do most liberal arts colleges. With that, I'll pass it on to Leah to talk a little bit about Willamette.
Everyone, my name is Leah. I'm an assistant director of admission at Willamette. We are located in Salem, Oregon, which I mentioned is the state capital of the state of Oregon. We are the oldest institution in the West, so we were here long before Oregon, Washington, and California were even states. And the city of Salem really grew up around Willamette University, so there's a lot of heritage and history here, and especially us being right across the street from the state capitol, a lot of opportunity for our students, as well as for those that work at the capitol who often wander across the street to our campus as well. As you'll see in this picture, the state capitol is truly 76 feet from our campus. There is Waller Hall in the front of this picture, and then the star trees to the left, which are these big 5 trees that were planted on our campus in the 80s. So at Willamette, we often say that students do one of 3 things, if not all 3, an internship, study abroad, or undergraduate research. And for a lot of our students, it often leads to internships at either the Capitol or Salem Health Hospital, which is right across the street on the other side of campus. But there's always all types of opportunities in downtown Salem as well, which is only 15 minutes of a walk down the street from our campus. When it comes to research, a lot of our faculty who are incredibly distinguished in their fields and work really hard to create an academic experience for our students often tap those students to have them join in on research projects as well. As Nell mentioned, a lot of people aren't entirely clear on what research might look like in certain different areas, but faculty are really great about pointing out students who might be helpful in finding articles or analyzing data or crunching numbers for the projects that they're working on. And it's this awesome in the classroom and out of the classroom experience for students to kind of apply what they're learning to a hands-on project. We have a couple of different other features of campus that are particularly unique, such as the hearth system. So there are these physical spaces on campus called hearths, which are designated by academic major. And they're physical spaces where students can gather based on their major. And for example, there's a fireplace right by the English hearth, surrounded by comfy couches, and the faculty's offices are actually located around this physical space. And so often you'll have students sit down after class to ask questions of one another, and also the faculty who might wander out to discuss maybe what internship you're looking for the summer, or what your future career goals might be. It's this great opportunity to connect with those who might also be in your major, or go over to another hearth and kind of explore other topics as well. We also have a couple of dual degree programs on our campuses, which allow us to have students complete a 3-year bachelor's degree and then move on to a 1-year master's of science in data science, which is our newest program, a 3-year bachelor's degree and a 2-year MBA in our business school, or a 3-year bachelor's degree and a 3-year JD in our law school. And these are great opportunities for students who want to complete that bachelor's degree a little bit faster, as well as continue their graduate studies here at Willamette as well. I think I could go on and on about the many different ways that Willamette allows to build for community for students and allows students to personalize their education. But I think what's really special about Willamette is the sense of belonging and community. Similar to what Jeremy mentioned earlier, is that we have this feel on campus where students are able to explore and develop themselves personally, academically, and professionally in whatever way that they're looking for, because there's a lot of chances to kind of build your own experience and your own adventure here at Willamette. So I will pass it along then to Jeremy to talk a little bit about Lewis and Clark.
Thank you. Again, my name is Jeremy Jackson. I am an admissions counselor with Lewis and Clark College. Again, we're located in Portland, Oregon, and I want to take this time just to highlight a couple of things that I think are kind of unique to Lewis and Clark, because as we've discussed, and hopefully you've realized, there are many similarities between all of us as institutions. The first thing I'll talk about is our location. We are located in Portland, Oregon. However, specific to that, we're on the southwest side of Portland, right along the edge of Tryon Creek State Park. So the campus is surrounded by beautiful, lush green trees. We're literally in the middle of a forest. And I mentioned that because so many of our students have an interest in the outdoors. So much so that we as a campus have a college outdoors program, which is an office here on campus specifically devoted to helping students explore the outdoors of the Pacific Northwest, a way to get off campus, get outside of Portland, and enjoy the Pacific Northwest. So they host trips. Could be something simple like learning how to forage for mushrooms, or something a little more complex like deep sea kayaking along the San Juan Islands in Washington State. Some really cool opportunities for students to go wherever they want within the Pacific Northwest, here in Oregon, parts of Northern California, and Washington State. The second thing I will mention in relation to Lewis and Clark that I think is pretty nifty is our academic symposia. These are, we currently have 6 annual symposia specific to international affairs, gender studies, environmental affairs, Middle Eastern studies, and then lastly, our Ray Warren Multicultural Symposia. These are a wonderful opportunity for our students to come together and host lectures, roundtable discussions, workshops, all related to current events that are affecting us here in Portland, in the United States, or even globally. And the thing that I appreciate about them so much is that they are a wonderful way of bringing our entire campus community together, surrounded by academics, right? Students, I think one of the pillars of a Lewis and Clark student is a student that is academically engaged, academically motivated, and that's supported by these academic symposia because they all are student run. Even though students are collaborating with one another, they're collaborating with professors, they're collaborating with guest speakers and educators from all over the world. They are student run. And lastly, in line with this global focus that I just mentioned, are our overseas opportunities. Now, I do want to be forthright and say that every one of the institutions here today offer amazing overseas opportunities. I do want to say, however, why I'm mentioning it is because it's a big part of who we are as an institution. I do consider it one of our traditions, and I say it's a big part of our DNA because approximately 65 to 70% of our students go overseas for at least a semester. All of our opportunities are at least semester-long opportunities. Some of them are even year-long opportunities. And recently, a survey was sent out to alumni, and 82% of the alumni that responded said that their overseas opportunity here at Lewis and Clark played a role in the career that they chose to go into after leaving Lewis and Clark, whether it was associated with their major or not. In line with these overseas opportunities, most of them are accompanied by a Lewis and Clark faculty member. So you would literally be in another country, totally immersed in another culture for at least a whole semester, accompanied by a Lewis and Clark faculty member, and in line with some of the experiential learning opportunities that many of my colleagues have already mentioned. On the opportunities that we have overseas, students are oftentimes not even in a physical classroom space. They're literally traveling around different parts of a region or a country, never stepping foot into a classroom. So I know that wasn't a ton of information about Lewis and Clark, so I'm happy to address anything that I did cover today or anything that I didn't cover. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elena.
Hello, everybody, once again. So if you've been enjoying what we've had to say so far, if you've been listening to us and thinking, boy, that environmental studies program at Whitman sounds great, or boy, I really like the sound of being near the state capitol in Oregon, maybe Reed feels like the right place for you, or Lewis and Clark, or Puget Sound, it would be very natural for you to be wondering, so what do I have to do next? So I want to just quickly talk about nuts and bolts for a moment. This is another area where you will be really, really well served by doing your homework on the individual schools that you want to apply to. One of the things that is a little tricky about college admission in general is that lots of things will be very similar between institutions, but there will also be important differences. One question you'll want to be asking right out of the gate is, how do I apply? All of the schools that you've heard discussed here today use the common application, but that's not necessarily true of every college or university in the country, and so you'll want to be heads up to that. You also want to make sure you know what the deadlines are. There are different application plans. Are you interested in early action or early decision? Do you want to apply regular decision? Finding out what all of those things mean at the different schools that you're interested in and what the different associated deadlines are is going to be really important. Another thing that you will want to be heads up to, of course, is the financial part of college. And there are a couple of different ways to think about this. Maybe the first big question you want to be asking is, do I need to do anything extra for scholarships? What will a college need from me to make sure that I am eligible for scholarships or financial aid? So maybe if you're interested in a music scholarship or a debate scholarship, you'll need to submit some extra materials or maybe audition, or there might be a separate deadline you should be aware of. That's the kind of thing you want to make sure you're asking about. You want to make sure you're heads up to in the application process. One other thing that will absolutely require some investment and some participation on your end will be for need-based financial aid. Every one of our schools will ask you if you want to be considered for need-based financial aid, and I think everybody should. Just as a quick point of personal privilege, it is always to your advantage to go ahead and file these forms and be considered for additional financial aid. We will all ask you to submit at least the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and a few of us will also ask for a second form, the CSS profile. What those forms do is they let us take a look at your financial situation or your family's financial situation. Make an educated guess about how much you can afford to kick into going to college, and then compare that to our cost of attendance so we know which other financial resources to offer you. I want to just pause on this for a minute because it's really important. This is not the way that every college or even every type of college does their financial aid. What I'm talking about is that all of our schools, every school in the Northwest 5, will do individualized financial aid packaging. Once we see what those numbers look like for you, we'll offer you different resources. So maybe a scholarship or a grant or a work-study position. Maybe we'll ask you if you'd like to take out a student loan. Maybe you'll be eligible for a federal grant or a state grant to help cover the cost of coming to college at any of our schools. We're going to put that all together once we get those financial forms from you. Now, part of the reason this is really important is because doing this in an individualized way means that we will all have really high sticker prices up front. So I'll speak for myself, even though I think that this is similar amongst our institutions, but if you Googled how much does it cost to go to the University of Puget Sound, you would get a result that was somewhere in the neighborhood of $65,000. That absolutely does not mean you are going to pay $65,000. Very few of our students do. But this is one big difference between public colleges and private colleges, is because we're going to put that financial aid package together individually, rather than saying right out of the gate, hey, we're going to charge one price for out-of-state students and one lower price for in-state students. That's not something that private colleges do. Because we're not making those big category-based adjustments, and instead we're doing it individually, as I've mentioned, it means that that upfront number can look really high. Don't let that scare you. That number is going to change dramatically throughout the process. So if you think in listening to any of us, that sounds like the place for me, or I think I might find a home at that school, or I'm really interested in going through the process and learning more with a couple of these schools, we want you to feel empowered to do that. And we want you to feel empowered to ask us your questions along the way.
Excellent. All right. Well, up here you can see a little bit more about our websites and Instagram handles, contact information. Please ask questions in the Q&A. We would absolutely love to hear from you, but of course we will fill this time regardless. We do have one question off the bat about whether any of our schools offer a film program. I can actually answer this, I think, for all of us, but please correct me, everyone. To my understanding, Whitman and Willamette have a film studies and cinema studies program respectively, which focuses more on the study of film than filmmaking. Do any of the other three of you have a film program that you would like to notify me and everyone else about?
And we also have an opportunity for folks to study film through that theory lens through our comparative literature program.
Through our Rhetoric and Media Studies program, there are courses specific to documentary and filming, but not a full major or minor.
Yeah, similar to what Nell and Jeremy have said, if you're interested in film analysis or critique, you can look at that in our interdisciplinary humanities emphasis, but we don't offer classes in filmmaking. So if you're thinking like, I really want to learn how to make, I want to be the next Scorsese, this is probably not the most direct path to that outcome.
Yeah, that question was asked at a panel I did earlier this summer, and I had a moment where I was like, I think I kind of know, but thank you for providing more context, everyone, to your programs. With questions relating to a specific discipline, yeah, asking us if we have it, or asking a college if they have the field that you're interested in, that's always a great first step. But if you're interested in something really specific or a really specific career path, just asking how a student would go from arriving on our campus to entering that field, because there will be many different ways that you can be successful. And even if you don't see the major you're looking for exactly on our list, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't be offering those courses. So seeing a campus that you're really excited about, still ask them about creative pathways to get to study what you want to be studying and enter the career field that is of interest to you at this time. Keep asking questions. I have a question, I guess, for the group. We can all speak to this really briefly. First, I want to address a misconception about liberal arts colleges and preparedness for next steps. So the college to career transition. I will say that I think a liberal arts college is like absolutely a perfect place for like step-by-step 4-year guidance on what you want to do next. Like the transition from our campuses to like the real world is a pretty comfortable one. I would say you'll feel like the work you're doing in college is relevant. But would anybody like to add anything about their college's career services, access to internships? I'll open that up to the group because it's one thing we didn't address before.
Well, I'll just tap on maybe quickly and say that, and I believe this is also true for the group, but one thing that is really great about liberal arts colleges, and one thing I think one reason why you've heard so many of us talk about experiential learning at our schools, is because that oftentimes can be a great way to sort of roadmap your way to what do I want to do after college. And that's one thing that often comes up if you are majoring in a big field that will let you pursue a lot of different opportunities, is making sure that you've had the chance to try some stuff that lets you figure out both what you like and to build your resume in those areas, but also to figure out what you don't like. So if you come to college thinking you might want to be a teacher, an English teacher, and you're majoring in English, it's really to your benefit if you do your first student teaching gig when you're a sophomore or a junior in college, because maybe you'll come out of that thinking, I love this. I never want to do anything but this. And maybe you'll come out of it thinking, I never want to be a teacher. Like I answered that question for myself. It's way better if you figure that out before you've graduated. And it will help you out even more given that you're in a liberal arts degree, you're studying English that isn't going to attach you to a particular career. So one of the great things, I think one of the reasons our graduates have so much success in graduate school and in their careers and in job placement is because you can be flexible in that way, and you're going to get a degree that will really grow with you and your interests and with the world.
I will add too that at Willamette, a lot of our students do consider graduate school, and there's also that type of support in our career center to allow students to prepare for their med school applications or law school applications or any other maybe master's program that they're looking for after undergraduate. So there's a lot of support in both that job search piece as well as applying for graduate school. And it's a great opportunity to kind of connect with different opportunities in the area, but also to think about kind of your long-term career goals. And there's just a lot of opportunity, as Elena said, about exploring and kind of seeing what's going to fit your particular path.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that and just kind of mention that one of the things we do, and I know all of the other institutions here do, really try to make sure that students are aware of service and volunteer-oriented opportunities related to what they're studying, again, in connection with the communities and cities that we live in. That's something that all of our campuses do, and something that I would implore you all as prospective students to start thinking about in relation to your experiences when you do make that transition to college.
I have a question for you, Nell, about virtual recruitment. What advice would you give to students in general about kind of taking advantage of this overwhelming amount of online options? I said virtual recruitment as an admission officer. What I actually mean is a virtual college search as a student. Any advice you would impart to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, this year is so different for so many reasons. And when it comes to how to understand these different schools, you have a whole really like repertoire of options. One of the best ways to get to know a school is to connect with the admission counselor for your state, for Alaska. So you guys are already doing all of that. We're here, you have our faces in front of you, our names in front of you. I also recommend going to schools' different websites. Many schools are offering optional virtual tours. Here at Reed, we've been doing live virtual tours, so you could speak directly to a student tour guide as they're walking around campus and field your answers. I think in lieu of being able to set foot on campus, looking at these virtual tours is a great way to get familiar with your surroundings. It's also really valuable to speak to current students at each of these institutions. And I'm sure we all offer ways to do that through our website. So I encourage you to reach out to current students, ask about what their freshman year looks like, what the dorms are, if the food tastes good. Great questions to shoot those folks.
All right, and we are just about at time now, but I want to thank all of you so much for joining us today. And to underscore what Nell has said, please check out our individual visit options, all of ours, or if there were a couple of schools today that you really resonated with. There are so many options. Like I said, it's overwhelming with online recruitment, but technically it is more accessible across the board. We've all been forced through the situation to have the online resources that we probably should have had from the beginning. So check us all out. We'd love to connect with you, and we're so sorry that we can't visit you in Alaska this fall. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. When you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 4-question survey, and we'd appreciate any feedback that you can provide. Also, this was just one of many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions at strivescan.com/Alaska. And in about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording, as well as all of the other session recordings at the same website where you registered. Thank you and have a great evening.